Welcome to Unashamed Unafraid, a show unashamed about sexual addiction recovery and unafraid of coming unto Christ for healing.
Where we talk about real recovery stories, answer anonymous questions with experts, and share resources that actually work.
I'm your host, Steve.
And I'm your co-host, James, and we are unashamed, unafraid.
James.
Hey, Steve.
I have never laughed so hard in my life than I have with my friend,
Mr. DJ Bishop. Yep. The guy's hilarious.
So, and like,
totally wise.
Yes. So I think of like when it's like quiet and carry a big stick, dumb as a fox, right? All of these things of people who have a real humble walk, but are just like beast mode, right? That is my friend DJ to the T.
Absolutely. And what a transformational episode this was. Like, just, this can be a game changer for our listeners who lean into some of the wisdom bombs that he's dropping the whole time.
I think this is like 3 months worth of therapy. So you can go pay for 3 months worth of therapy, or
become an outsider.
Right. And so you can do that by going to unashamedunafraid.com/donate. The bonus content, we went for like another 40 minutes, Jason.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
I'm just like, we could have gone for another 3 hours. Probably going to have back. But
yeah,
anyways,
absolutely.
Episode about humility and confidence.
And self-care.
Turns out that's a big part of humility and confidence.
For sure.
Well, I hadn't put the dots together, if I'm just being honest, prior to being here. And the thing I will tell you about DJ is you can tell in his voice, and he's with us, and because I know him personally, and you do as well too.
Yeah.
This is a guy that lives it. This is not a talking head.
Oh, no.
This is real authenticity and the real deal. So we invite you to enjoy this episode with DJ and enjoy the transformation. DJ!
You are an excited little, what is it? Excited as a giddy schoolgirl?
DJ, my brother, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here this evening.
So, although DJ is being very professional right now, DJ is one of our super good therapist friends. He waves to us from the other side of the Rocky Mountains, is from where he hails, Boulder, right?
Yeah, just outside the Boulder bubble. My office is over in the Louisville area.
Yeah. So, DJ, for those people who don't have the privilege of being a good friend of yours, like James and I have, paint yourself into context. Kind of tell us about you. Give us the bio background.
Originally from Florida, grew up in the Panhandle, just on the Florida side of the line from Mobile, Alabama, and then was educated in Los Angeles. Spent about 9 years out there, and then through my work in substance use disorder, working in treatment, I was recruited by a company called Jaywalker Lodge. And worked in their residential department for a few years, which is men's gender-specific drug treatment. And then resigned from there and moved to the Front Range, as we call it out here, just outside the Boulder bubble, to be with my partner, Lauren, whom I love dearly, and to build my private practice and explore my passion, which is psychodrama. And so I run a private practice therapy business. My office is in Louisville. I work primarily with substance use disorder, and then, of course, the cluster of things that are in orbit with substance use disorder, such as anxiety, depression, a lot of PTSD, trauma, complex PTSD. Those are the things, men's issues, existential crises, these types of things is what I work with. The majority of my practice is men. I would say it's like 70-30, 70% men, 30% women. I do a lot of psychodrama, which we can get into later what that is if the listeners don't know. And I do contracting work. with on-site workshops. I fly out there periodically to run trauma groups and individual intensives. And then I do a bunch of my own training all over the U.S., in Tennessee and California. One of the things that I really, really, really love about this work, particularly my practice, is that, I do all the things that I practice. So if it's experiential therapy, I do my own experiential therapy, and I found it through my own personal therapy work. I found psychodrama through my own personal therapy work and pursued it for my own betterment before shifting gears into professional development and practice. And the thing I love about psychodrama is that I must continue to do my own work in order to facilitate the work. The substance use disorder work, the 12-step facilitation, the spirituality, this is all stuff that I do, that I have found helpful, that I've seen be helpful for a lot of other people. And this is the stuff that I practice in, my therapy practice. So just about everything I ask a client to do, I was at one time asked to do and then did. And so that sort of like congruency between what it is that I'm practicing in my practice, what I'm facilitating in my practice, and what I do in my personal life gives me a lot of fulfillment and joy, meaning, and purpose. Being a therapist. And I never thought it would be that way. Like, that's not what I was going to be when I grew up at all.
So to summarize, DJ is a big deal, number one, and important to this episode, DJ is also the real deal.
He walks the walk.
Walks the freaking walk. And so when we were thinking about the topic of humility, which you are going to have to eat some humble pie, make some humble pie, create some humble pie, get familiar with humble pie if you are going to walk the walk of recovery and find healing. But also I have come to find part of the struggle with that is people get into recovery and then they can't gain confidence or have confidence. And I found anyone who recovers because they believe they will. They have the capacity, right? They have that strength of ego, a confidence, not an arrogance, right? But a confidence. And I think this is such a tough topic. And personally for me has been a really tough topic as I've kind of worked my recovery. And so DJ, if we were to kind of start with you, how would you define like humility? Like what even is that?
Oh my goodness. It's such a tough question, and just to put it within the context of, 12-step, right? Because you guys talk a lot about what is it, addiction recovery program, the ARP, which is the LDS's version or adoption of 12-step recovery that is more specific towards y'all's faith. You like to look at that. Humility in step one, it's so funny you use humble pie. That's what it's referred to as, is a serving of humble pie. And they talk about that in the 12 and 12, the companion to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Yet that's not where it remains. Humility transforms through each one of the steps, that it's this growing relationship through spirituality, through faith, through action, that in step 7 is no longer humble pie. In step 7, it's now the nourishing ingredient that provides us with serenity. So, what is the definition of humility? I think that's like nailing jelly to the wall. It's really kind of hard to like be super specific because I feel that it's more of a practice of staying right-sized versus overstepping our boundaries. I think it's a practice of asking and seeking versus knowing and deserving. Yeah, I think it's acknowledging I don't know. It's acknowledging I don't know everything. Like I don't have all the answers. Right. That there is something to gain from connecting with another person or connecting with a higher power or connecting with the earth, that humility is this this vehicle for connection.
So I have a question about then confidence. I think for me, stepping into confidence is something that I never really felt allowed to do, because it felt like if I was ever confident, then I was being proud. I was not being humble. And so, or I was being entitled, or I was being, there's so many there. As soon as I stepped into some kind of confidence, it in my brain and kind of the way I was raised, I was stepping into this, terrible place of arrogance and pride. So tell me what confidence is then, and how I can be humble and confident, or be confident and not arrogant, for example.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So I minored in philosophy when I was working on my undergraduate, and what do you do in philosophy? But you define terms and then debate the definition of those terms. And so it's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm back in a philosophy class as to what is confidence. And Socrates is going to pop out, and we're going to end up in this like intellectual circle and that confidence, and it's funny. I looked it up. I was like, what do they mean by confidence? I'm pretty sure they're going to ask this question. So I just Googled it because that's what we do. That's Google has all the answers, right? Google is not humble. Self-assurance arising from one's own appreciation of one's own abilities or qualities. That was the definition that I found.
And so DJ, you're a confident guy. What is it to you?
I don't consider myself a confident guy. I don't really consider myself, I would consider, I know that I exercise humility as best I can. And it's funny, like when talking about humility, it's like deny, right? Because as soon as I say I'm humble, I'm not humble anymore, right? And then confidence, totally. It's like...
As soon as I'm confident, then I'm arrogant.
Right. Yeah. So it's almost like being labeled a hipster or something. Like as soon as you deny it just guarantee that locks it in. Like it's a trap, you just have to like keep moving like you didn't even hear it. So confidence, how to weigh the two, humility and confidence.
Well, let me put it this way, because this is like which is why, I invited you for this episode, right? I think you do this really well, because I think people see it in the paradigm we're talking about it right now. Like humility is one thing, like humility is this side of the room, confidence is this side of the room. To your point, like if you kind of say you're humble, then you're blowing it, but confidence too far, you're arrogance. Like are confidence, humility really in conflict, or are they like one and the same? Like do they move together, or are they like two opposite ends of the pole? Because this is what I see. So one capacity I know DJ is as a guided onsite, which PS, you got to ball hard to be a guided onsite. And I see DJ working with clients, right, and being there in total humility, like to what you said earlier, like what can I learn? How can I be open? And then I watch him with total, what I would say, confidence, like really hold clients in really tough places and help them move through difficult trauma with a belief and a hope that it's going to happen. I'm going to be here with you and make it happen. And there's a swagger and a confidence that comes with that. So how have you, just to James's point, like in your walk, how have you like blended those together as opposed to holding them apart like this?
It's a great question. And I guess the thing that's coming into my mind right off the top of my head, it's kind of like in the rooms of AA when someone presents the topic of like honesty. Most people talk about dishonesty, right? And so introduce the topic of humility and talk about pride, letting go. We hang on, right? So it places us in a dialectic, And so when you say humility, my immediate opposite is entitlement, right? If we were to set up, to use a psychodrama term, a spectrogram, right? Where on one end we have humility, and then on the other end we have entitlement, and there's this invisible line. And so on one side of the room, we're closer to entitlement, and the other side, we're closer to humility. Where would we stand? That's how I view the relationship with humility, is like, how entitled am I being right now? How does this entitlement come out in me? Or am I not being entitled at this point? Right? Am I not exercising it right now, today, in this moment? And so when it comes to entitlement, I think entitlement is the antithesis of humility. I think entitlement cuts us off from relationships. And I think entitlement certainly shows itself in confidence, right? That this sort of like unhealthy or toxic level of confidence is more along the lines of entitlement.
Right. Arrogance, right? We'd call that arrogance.
Mm-hmm. That I deserve this because I worked for this, or I'm owed this because of my station in life, right? That the world needs to bend to my needs. And so, sometimes, when confidence is taken to such an extreme, then it ceases to be confidence, and it's more about entitlement. So how to balance the two, I think, the confidence and the humility, it's a tough philosophical debate. And for me, it's staying connected. It's asking for help. It's following directions. It's opening myself up to other people and listening to their stories and following them. And knowing that I have the ability to do that, given the work that I've done. And so when it comes to confidence, the way that I kind of conceptualize of that for me is built on like self-worth. And where I get self-worth is from self-care. And so the more self-care I engage in, the more self-worth I will have. And in turn, the more comfortable I will be in my skin, which is read by the external world, people looking at me, as confidence. Because I'm comfortable in my skin, because I'm taking care of myself.
And now that becomes deeply authentic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just living out of authenticity at that point. And to some people, maybe, they might think that looks arrogant, where it's like, no, this is just me.
Well, for me, I think one thing that I've learned. Well, I have two things, because what DJ just said was so profound. So I invite you just to rewind the last minute and a half, and you'll get a lot. Because I'm still kind of trying to, in truth, internalize what you just said, DJ, because that was profound. Because to me, when you're talking about self-worth, comes from, right, self-care. Mm-hmm. Addiction behavior, compulsive behavior, is just a maladaptive form of self-care. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to this is looking at porn, getting a prostitute, right, drinking alcohol. I feel like it's the only thing that I actually do for me. Or it's the only, so it's really, they're trying to meet that need that you're talking about, of that self-care to restore self. They're just doing it in a maladaptive way that in the end takes away from self, right? And breeds shame and so many different things. But it's a maladaptive way of trying to do what DJ just said.
Yes. And so there's a guy, and he wrote this book. The guy's name is Gerald May, and the book that he wrote is Addiction and Grace. And in that book, he talks about addiction uses up our spiritual desire. And that spiritual desire is like that inner glow and life force. The thing that allows us to be alive and to long for and to desire and to sort of to connect with other people. Addiction co-opts this. And instead of filling that void, that internal void, with spirituality, we fill it, and an addict or an alcoholic right, is going to fill it with spirits versus spirituality, which Carl Jung jumped on, in his letters between Bill Wilson and himself, over a shared client or sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the stories, and there is a solution of the big book Alcoholics Anonymous, and this is where Carl Jung defines what a spiritual awakening is, which is on page 27 in the big book Alcoholics Anonymous. He talks about this, and then later in the 60s, Bill Wilson and Carl Jung shared some letters where Carl Jung was identified that we have the spiritual void and we fill it with spirits trying to complete ourselves. But what is really going to make us a whole person is a spiritual life, right? And so it's this shortcut that hijacks. It works for a little while and does some really amazing things, numbs the pain, keeps us moving, keeps us alive in really harrowing situations, sometimes in abusive situations or emotionally painful situations. It'll work up to a degree and then it stops working. And then that's when some serious pain really comes into play that usually constitutes a bottom of some sort. And so, that this addiction steals it from us. So in recovery, now we're reclaiming this, right?
Because addiction leaves us spiritually bankrupt, as it says in the book, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. So we're spiritually bankrupt, and now we enter into recovery upon this bottom, feeling absolutely humiliated. And this is lesson one in humility. Oh my gosh, I give up. I can't do it anymore. I need help. What do you got? Right? I need some help. And so now all of a sudden we're reclaiming that spiritual desire. We're starting the process of reclaiming that spiritual desire. And so that, yes, addiction type of maladaptive self-care, just as much as recovery, is teach how to take care of ourselves, both mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah. So early in your process, right? As you were on your own journey with everything, what were some of the best things that you did in that self-care to start to restore that spiritual awakening for you?
So I would say in the beginning, I wasn't good at it. What I understood as self-care would be I always make this joke. It's a full pack of cigarettes and about, 24 ounces of coffee. This was self-care. And, that's the way it was for a lot of years. Because that's what I thought. It was better than what it was previous. Right. Yeah. And, when I got into therapy school and started learning about therapy, that sort of changed, but it still took time of what constituted self-care. Today, when someone says self-care, I have a much better understanding of what it means for me, right? And today, what it means for me is I look at that sort of wellness wheel of life, spirituality, physiology, financial, professional, there's 8 categories. I can't remember them off the top of my head. I didn't know I was going to go in that direction. So I kind of look at all of those areas, and then I adjust accordingly. Where are my deficits and where do I need to invest in? And so the big categories that I play a lot: exercise. What have I done to get in my body? Alcoholics and addicts like to stay out of their body. So what am I doing to drop into my body? Whether that be going for a walk, running, jogging, yoga, cycling, lifting weights, doing restorative yoga, taking a bath. What am I doing to drop into this body so that I'm not just a talking head? And then, what am I doing spiritually for my self-care? Am I engaging in my 12-step program? Am I doing all the things that, that asks of me to do? And then mentally and emotionally, am I tending to my own therapy work? And, it took me a few years to find that what worked for me. And am I engaging in the things that worked for me? So am I engaging in psychodrama? Am I engaging in talk therapy? Am I engaging in group therapy? You know, partnership is important to me. So am I investing in my relationship? Am I taking time for that relationship? And then family. Family of origin is tough for me. So I lean a lot into family of choice. Am I investing in those relationships or am I isolating? Right? When was the last time I talked to my BFF? When was the last time I went and had lunch or dinner with a friend of mine? These are the types of things that I look at now for self-care. Am I reading? Have I been nourishing my mind, working this muscle, whether it be nonfiction or fiction, whatever it is, but am I reading, compared to spending a lot of time on a screen? So these are the types of things that I look at. Oh, and food. Like, what kind of food am I ingesting? Mm-hmm. Right? Because I am what I eat. And so now that I've discovered what good food is, right? Am I continuing to make those choices that are going to make me feel the best?
Now, by good food, you mean just delicious, right?
No, by good food, I mean a balance between what my body needs, which is a lot of vegetables, right? And what I want.
I'm about to be in trouble because this is an area that I'm struggling a lot right now. So I'm doing a little of the shame, So, and one thing
I want to jump in there. So, just notice the list. It was, a 50 pack of cigarettes and a whole bunch of coffee. And now you're like, yep, that was the two things. And now you just spent 3-5 minutes listing off all of the things that you consider and look at as self-care. Just all of the things that you're trying to engage in. That's such a big difference. I just wanted to really point that out.
Well, and speaking to DJ's personal character, right, of the big deal and real deal, we were running a program together out at On-Site. So we're both running groups and we're there at night. And DJ's like, hey, do you want to come kind of do some restorative yoga with me? And everything in my head is like, nope, I want to eat some potato chips, or I'm out watching a show. And I'm like, no, I love my friend DJ. So, okay, so that brotherhood, right? He did mention his best friend earlier. He left my name out, but it's me. And he, and so he invites me. So we do this yoga, and it changed. It changed our mood. It changed where we were at. And we spent the next hour in some cathartic laughter and just connecting with each other and some deep conversation. And I just remember that was, just a moment of me seeing DJ actually do self-care, but then also inviting me into that and teaching me self-care. That was a big deal for me. I don't think we've ever talked about that. So I want you to know how cool that was for me. Just in that moment to be in that walk with you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we haven't talked about that. I do remember that. And I don't do that all the time. I do it a lot of the time, but not all the time. I still struggle with self-care on a daily basis, because it just, part of me just screams out, yeah, I want to eat, something really sugary. I'm going to get a giant cookie the size of my head and just pound that and scroll on Instagram and then watch some stuff on HBO Max. And then that'll be the night. Right.
Right.
But I know I feel horrible after that. I don't feel restored. And so it's this sort of constant pendulation between those two, not necessarily all the way to that extreme, but to some degree. Right. And so I think that is part of just exercising humility, knowing that I'm not always going to be on target, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so before we run out of time here, the one other thing I wanted to talk about, because this is basically me getting free therapy from DJ, but I think there are other people this applies to too. So one thing that I've noticed in my walk is we talked about dialing that internal compass, right? Of self-worth from self-care and that. But a question I want to ask you is, I found that a lot of the shame coming at me was people calling me arrogant, calling me entitled, telling me I don't have what it takes to do recovery, not giving me hope, but giving me shame. And me saying, oh, well, they all must be right. I guess I am really arrogant, or I guess I don't have hope. And so how do you combat that external piece? Because even, we have a lot of couples on here that are married, and a lot of times, with betrayal trauma, the partner is not feeling great. So you being sober for a month, they still aren't in a good place. You just had an affair 2 months ago. So they're still in a lot of hurt and a lot of shame. And so you're not going to bring home that 30-day chip, and they're going to go, I'm so proud of you, because they're not there in their healing, which I can respect. So what advice would you give of kind of not letting external forces interfere with how I see myself, from either tearing me down with shame or trying to suck me into the validation of, building my ego? So now it is arrogance because I care what all these people think. So how do you do that balance with the external people in our lives and forces?
That's a great question. For me, right, it is going to come back to action and service. So action, what am I doing to take care of myself right now? What am I doing to make sure that I'm as grounded as possible? And that does not mean that I'm floating in the lotus position when I meditate. That means that, I'm busy. Like, how busy am I? Busy in my recovery. And so if that is, as the partner of someone who's new to addiction, like, how many Al-Anon meetings am I going to? Being grounded, and grounded is not floating in the lotus position while I meditate. Grounded is like, what are my feet doing on this ground? Right? Like, where am I moving? What are they doing? Where are they? Am I in a meeting? Am I working with my sponsor? Am I doing the steps? Am I taking the next indicated action given the circumstances? 30 days is awesome. I remember my 30 days vividly. I will remember it forever. It was one of the toughest chips that I had to pick up. It took, and when I hand out chips, I'm like, 30-day chip, 30 days and 1,000 nights. That's the, how it rolls. And so when that pressure from outside comes in, then I lean on the people that are around me. Who am I surrounded by? Right? Are these friends? Are these trusted travelers? Right? That know what it is that I'm endeavoring upon and have some compassion and generosity for me as I Forrest Gump my way through whatever hardship is in front of me. Is it am I surrounding myself with people who are exercising like a level of distrust and transaction, right? That that are like pushing, so that they can feel better inside, right? So like, what is my community looking like? And so I found that typically in life, there's going to be a mixture of both. People pushing for someone to do something so that they can feel better on the inside, feel safer, calmer, more grounded, etc. And people who are going to be supporting regardless of what an individual does, just, stoked to see them show up, stoked to see them engaging, stoked to see them trying, right? And just sitting back and watching the show in the most, loving and compassionate sort of way. And so I think in those instances, it's like, how do I balance the transactional relationships and the transformational relationships? Like, how do I balance these two? And how do I set boundaries for myself and accept the natural consequences, right? That all of these actions at the end of the day help us accept the natural consequences to our actions, whatever those natural consequences may be. And so if I eat healthy food, a lot of vegetables and lean meat on a daily basis, the natural consequence of that is I'm going to feel better, right? I'm going to run cleaner and longer and farther, right? And if I scroll on the internet and eat cookies every day, and I love cookies, like, don't get me wrong, I still eat cookies. But if that's like I'm eating a sole diet of cookies and social media scrolling, right? Then the natural consequences of that are going to be feelings of anxiety, depression, and isolation.
Well, and to me, that's such a sign of earlier what you said about humility is, willing to ask for help and say, I don't know. And one thought that came to me was humility is also, right, which is big in recovery, understanding that I can't control the outcome. I can't say, well, I, in my arrogance and entitlement, actually can eat the cookie and still run clean. So that's me, right? Where, to your point, right, humility is being open to the fact that I don't control the outcome, both of natural consequences,
don't control the consequences
and relational.
Right?
Yeah, I don't control the consequences, and I also don't control relationally that piece. Going back, boundaries and talking about external relationships. And so, as we kind of wrap the episode here, I guess the last question I want to give you, DJ, is just what's one thing I can do if this episode's hitting me between the eyes, which for me personally it is a little bit, of just like, what, like I don't do self-care. My humility maybe is not in check. I'm feeling some of that entitlement. What is just one thing I could do, like today as I'm listening to this episode, to start that journey back on that spectrogram from the entitlement side to the humility side?
Yes. So I'm going to answer that question by going back to a point that I made in passing earlier without really explaining. And I want to grab a hold of that before it gets misinterpreted. So I said a little quip of Forrest Gump my way through whatever obstacle. So what I meant by that I just moved so quickly through, is that Forrest showed up with a degree of authenticity and humility and genuine curiosity of just trying to express love and connection through everything he went through, right? And so when I show up in a place where I understand that life is a gift given to me at no cost on a daily basis, and therefore there's this crossroads that I can navigate, where I could exercise entitlement that I deserve the life that I've been given today, that I'm just expected to have another day, right? Or I can exercise an attitude of gratitude and ask for help in the morning and say thank you at the end of the day, knowing that the next day isn't guaranteed, that life is given to me as a gift at no cost to me, right? And it's the same thing with my recovery. When I'm exercising a degree of gratitude and asking for help, knowing that I don't know, curious about what answers will present themselves throughout the day, and leading with heart, love, compassion, and generosity to the best of my ability, then all of a sudden I find myself drinking from the well of self-care versus drinking from the well of entitlement, resentment, disconnection. I'm coming from a place of connection in self-care versus a place of domination or control with entitlement.
Love that, DJ. It's fantastic.
No, in the words of our friend Biggie, if you don't know, now you know. So DJ, thank you so much for being with us. This truly has been a gift. So tons of gratitude. So thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. What an honor and scary, fun, exciting thing to do, to be on a podcast.
Yes. So where can people find you if they want to get more of the DJ?
So my web address is djbtherapy.com. So www.djbtherapy.com. So DJ just like a radio DJ, B like Bishop, therapy like mental health therapy, djbtherapy.com.
Awesome. So DJ is a very gifted clinician. So if you are looking for one, boom, baby, he is truly one of the best. And what DJ didn't say that I'll say about him is that DJ does do individual couples workshops like that. So you can fly to Colorado, do 3-4 days with him and change your life, by the way. So I'm going to put that out there because I know what he's capable of. So if you're looking for some of that, DJ's the guy. Love that you're with us. Please give us 5 stars on iTunes. That's where the world judges us and finds us. Invite you to follow us at Unashamed Unafraid, Facebook and Instagram. Again, if you're in need of a scholarship or would like to donate, we invite you to go to unashamedunafraid.com/scholarship/donate. And until we're with you next time, continue to be unashamed.